Hey everyone, Kelly here, just to let you know that this episode deals heavily with sexual assault. It's so pervasive in this movie that it's hard for us to have a conversation about the movie without talking about it. So, if conversations of that type would cause you emotional distress or any kind of trouble, then maybe just skip this entire episode. Okay? Alright.
You mean like how much I fucking hate Mardi Gras now that I don't participate in it?
Wait, you hate Mardi Gras? You live in New Orleans and you hate Mardi Gras? You gotta tell me why you hate
Well,
Mardi Gras so much.
I did Mardi Gras so hard for so long that I burnt out on it, and now that I don't participate in it, it's just a huge inconvenience.
Yeah. Lots of loud noise, lots of cars, lots of people beeping and showing their boobs when you're just like, lady, I'm just trying to get to the library to read the Bible.
Right,
Okay.
I was getting groceries this morning and it impeded me, and I'm like, get off my lawn, Mardi
Yep. I
Gras.
was just trying to buy whole vegetables that I was going to cook at home while listening to gospel music. And you are showing me your tits and throwing beads at my car.
Right.
Like, okay, so I got to ask as like an outsider, I've never been to New Orleans. So like, is it as wild as like it makes it seem?
Spring break!
Or is it just more like, is it like a Juggalo concert where it's just a bunch of dirty people leaving a bunch of trash everywhere? Or
It's all of the things that you've heard about it. Yes, and it's also a nice place if you, depending on where you go during the festivities, it's a nice place to take your family and have a good time and barbecue, or there's a bunch of filthy drug addicts falling all over themselves and whipping their tits out and robbing you. So it's
I
everything.
don't know. Both sound like a good time. You
Yeah,
know,
no,
like
they are. I've done both, and it is a good time, but it's rough if you're down in it. And I mean, people down here, I don't know how some of them do it. They have, people are 60 and 70 still out there like in the shit, and I'm just like, man, I'm trying to get a coffee and my groceries.
Have you ever like done Mardi Gras? Have you ever been to New Orleans or any of
No.
that stuff? So you're right there with me. Do you have any desire to ever do it, Katie? Like, do you have any allure to try Mardi Gras?
I don't know. Be something to experience, I guess, but I don't really drink or anything, so.
Oh, there's plenty of other drugs you could do though.
Don't worry, there's heroin too.
Yeah, there's whatever you want to do is probably there.
Don't
I
worry, we still got crack.
I was like having trouble one time, like staggering drunk, and had to sit down for a minute, and so I popped into an alley where a bunch of people were sitting, and this is what Mardi Gras is like. I didn't know if these people were Mardi Gras or unhoused people, but they rolled a huge blunt and smoked it with me, and I passed out with them. That's the kind of atmosphere that you can
Hell
find.
yeah. Well, as long as you wake up with your wallet and your kidneys
Yeah, no,
afterwards,
no, I was fine. I was I think at the time I was like what kind vagrants was the thought that like went through my mind.
Did you have a monocle on and a top hat when you thought this thought?
Yeah.
Good sirs.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
sirs, I do say.
Then I woke up and dusted myself off and went and found the rest of my party, and got back to it.
Right on. Yeah, I've always thought like I've always had like a little bit of a draw to New Orleans, but mine purely comes from Gabriel Knight's Sins of the Fathers. So Gabriel Knight's Sins of the Fathers. That game was
Oh,
the
you
whole
know what?
reason why.
I've never played that. I should play that. All right, but hey,
That
we watched the movie, didn't we?
I mean, I guess. I mean, this movie talking about Gabriel Knight's Sins of the Fathers, it sounds a little bit more interesting to me than talking about this movie.
Yeah,
Spoiler.
this is
Spoiler.
this is the movie where you tricked us into watching a space sex pervert film. So
Yeah.
why don't you introduce it for us?
The movie that we watched is High Life with Robert Pattinson and Cedric Diggory in space with a lot of murder and rape. Yeah, like the part of the reason why I picked it is because I wasn't sure of any new sci-fi movies. I didn't want to just completely look at some old stuff. So I picked this one and thinking, who knows? It sounds like a kind of an interesting premise. Some guy stranded in space and he's taking care of himself and a little baby, and they're on some kind of freighter that's never coming back to Earth. I'm like, ooh, that could sound really existential and cool. And yeah, it was.
Honestly, some of it was a little interesting, especially the way that it starts. It starts sort of. It's not a sequential story. We're shown different it jumps around, it time hops. Um, and so I was intrigued at first, but everything that started to intrigue me was the stuff they didn't want to show. Is how I felt about this movie.
I noticed right at the beginning the music was it opened up with a saxophone clarinet duo, or maybe just one of the two as a duo, but it kind of in my ears it sounded like a sax clarinet duo, and I thought that was a really interesting twist, like sci-fi, but we're using kind of very traditional instruments, like traditional like jazz or street instruments almost, or like traditional symphonic instruments, that kind of stuff, where it's not even like we're not talking guitars or anything, even we're talking like old school stuff to a certain degree, you know.
You know, doesn't if I'm mistaken, correct me. But doesn't Ridley Scott do that a lot with his Alien stuff? It's like uh, flutes and oboes and whatnot.
Honestly, I don't remember, and it's been so long since I've seen it, I can't recall the soundtrack, but I do know that there was like, especially in the '80s, you see it in a lot of movies. There was a deviation when it came to soundtracks, and there was the two schools of thought were, one, it's the '80s. Let's use contemporary sound effects. Let's use synthesizers and guitars and set drums and stuff like that. And the other side was saying, no, let's go back to traditional orchestration and scoring, and let's use like symphonies and clarinets and saxophones and stuff like that. So I could see Alien and the Alien franchise siding on the one side, whereas stuff like Predator, I'm sorry, not Terminator and stuff like that, or
Right.
even like Halloween, they went the other side. But let's lean into the synth and let's make that unnatural sound part of the story that we're telling. The Thing, even.
Right. So the crying kid that he's talking to distracts him, and he loses like his spanner to the darkness of space, and that inspires what I assumed and was right at the time, a memory of a bloody hand dropping a rock down a well, which will come into play later. And then we kind of learn that he's completely alone on this vessel with this baby, and that was interesting to me. Out of the, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of here for this story. A guy stranded alone raising a child in a spaceship.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
That's
see.
compelling.
Yeah, let's see what
Yeah,
happens.
that's an interesting story, and that's why I was. I remember I tried to stay review free, but I did look at a couple reviews just to make sure that the movie we were watching wasn't horribly offensive or horribly boring. And one of the reviews said something along the lines of, this movie is a masterclass on facing oblivion." And then when I combined that review with a guy in space raising a child on his own, I was like, "Oh, this could be really cool. Like, how do you teach a child? What kind of lessons do you teach a child when there's no future for them? When you're never going to run into another human. You're never going to fall in love. You're never going to, if you write a book, nobody's ever going to read it, probably, that kind of stuff." Like, and that's spoiler, we didn't talk about that at all in this movie. I mean, it kind of bumps up against it, but they don't explicitly.
Like very yeah, very briefly at like the end they show like what 5 minutes of that. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's
It
where
was
it
weird.
felt like that should have been the prevailing thing all along. And maybe it was. Maybe it was the subtext, and that's what was the tension of the movie, is that this subtext of how do you face oblivion. But the characters are never explicitly dealing with it. I don't know. I would have liked to seen them gone into it. Like, I would have, the whole time jump, which we'll get to later, but I wish they would have done more in there. But I'll let you keep going with your recap before I jump ahead too far. So, Katie, what are your initial impressions of everything so far?
I hate this movie.
Boo! Boo!
So, what did you dislike about this movie so far when we're this far into it?
I mean the opening shot, which we've already discussed, which we're not going to get into details about. From that point on, I hate this movie. Like, there is nothing super redeeming. Like, it's a tangled up, weird mess of shit that they were like, this could be cool in space. Let's put this in here. Ooh, I like this idea. Like, it was a bunch of people in a room who were just hanging out. Maybe they took a nap, had an idea, and was like, all right, we're putting it in. This gets a solid 15. Sounds great.
Yeah, they definitely did stretch out almost every single scene. I totally get what you're saying. I was doing the alternative titles for this movie as well, and one of the alternative titles was Lord of the Flies meets 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
Because, and that's partially tongue-in-cheek, but partially serious, because it's like the first Star Trek and Space Odyssey combined, where like they just have these long shots that I don't know. Nothing's really changing. I don't know if you're building tension. Even if we're looking at a character's face, it's not like we're seeing a lot of emotions. They're just kind of bored. I'm looking at a face that's bored. How am I, how am I supposed to?
Hey
Yeah.
guys, what if we remade 2001 but we put prison rape in it?
Yeah, a lot of prison rape. And some of the prison rape will frame it as violent, horrible things. And some of the prison rape will frame it as like kind of sexy and romantic because it's not rape when a woman's doing it to a man kind of thing. Ugh.
Yeah, that's one of the little quick blurbs. Well, it wasn't a review, but it was like a preview that I watched, and one of the things that said was like sexy space thriller or something.
I did
And
not
so
see that. If
and
I
so
would
I
have seen
I
sexy
questioned
space
that.
thriller,
Yeah.
I would not have picked it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
And I don't know.
that colored my perceptions differently than what I actually got.
Yeah, and I don't know who brought it up, if it was somebody here that brought it up or if it was a review I saw, but somebody said something about this movie has the best one-person sex scene ever committed to film. And
Oh, the Sibian.
yeah, and I was like, wait a minute. Oh, that scene where it's just her dancing around. And I'm like, I don't
The
know.
scene is so fucking weird.
Yeah.
Like
Go ahead, Katie.
I don't even. It's just weird. I don't even want to get into it.
It wasn't sexy. Like, I don't know. Like,
No.
the woman was an attractive person. So I'm like, physically, there's no reason why her dancing around and getting naked wouldn't be sexy and titillating to me. But I did not get into it. It wasn't alluring in any way. So I don't know what they were going for. And it lasted. I looked it back up before we recorded today, and it's over 3 minutes that we're watching her writhe around to like really heavy industrial techno music, and it's just a masturbation scene. Like, I don't know what, as an audience member, what am I supposed to be doing for those 3 minutes? Am I supposed to just whip it out? Like, is everybody in the theater just expected to just kind of take care of their own business while the scene is going on?
So let's get to that because there's few things that I actually have to say about this movie, but that's one of them. So there are these prisoners on this ship. There is a captain who I believe is also a prisoner. I think everyone's a prisoner. There's a doctor, and she's doing fertility experiments in space to see if they can get past the radiation affecting childbirth. And so they show like a little montage of every day she takes everyone's semen, and there's a few female inmates, a few male inmates, and she collects the semen from the males and collects, I'm guessing, embryos and whatnot from the females. And as part of their, I don't know, I guess the reward for the donation of their fluid, they get 15 minutes in the sex box or whatever
Yep.
that is.
Yep.
So my question is, do they all is it are there other things for like,
Oh
guy
yeah.
parts, or
Yeah.
do they all just ride the Sibian?
Yeah, to quote Data, it's fully functional and well versed in thousands of techniques. Is the way I took it. Like it has like different size holes at different levels, so you can stand up, sit down, lay down. This is kind of how I imagined it. And again, one of the alternate titles that I came out when it came to my mind when I saw this was "In Space, Everyone Can Hear You Masturbate." Because
Right, but they don't show any of the other options. It's a like empty room with a seat with a dildo that comes up from the middle of it.
yeah, like maybe they just kind of assume, well, even for the men, your G spot's in the right place, buckaroo, strap on,
Right,
and the guy's like, I'm not really into this, and they're like, too fucking late, you're a prisoner, bend over,
Right.
grab the lube, buddy, like.
Yeah, get on the Sibian.
And so, because all we hear is we see the door close and we hear, ah! The person screams from inside, and then a gush of white fluid comes out from underneath the thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I couldn't be the only one watching the first time that went, "Oh my god, is that how much they came?" Like
Right,
no,
right.
no, that's the
It's
soap. That's
just-
the soap.
It's still gross.
You don't fucking understand what it's like working with actors. That's what that is.
It's supposed to. That's the image that it's conjuring in your head. I think that's extremely purposeful.
Yeah.
It's
Oh
like,
yeah.
Oh, a milky white fluid comes out after the sex box gets done. It's like a Futurama device, step into the sex cube.
Yeah.
And we got Mia Goth in this, and Andre, is it 5,000, 3,000?
3,000.
Andre 3,000, which surprised me, and he actually did.
Yeah.
He did pretty good. I didn't know he had acting chops.
He auditioned for Fast and the Furious and lost out to Ludacris, which is weird to me.
Yeah, that
He
seems tragic.
was much better. I think they fucked up, but alright.
But yeah, so it's just like these long stretches of the experiments, and there's this guy that looks like Bo Burnham who's like a criminal sex pest who keeps like perving on everybody.
Yeah, oh no, that was that's the Targaryen guy from House of the
Yeah,
Dragon, the
yeah,
one-eyed guy that the first time I saw him, I'm like, wow, this guy's face is shaped so weirdly. Like I'm not trying to shame somebody else for their appearance. It's just such a unique face, you know. Like he's got that
yes.
huge jaw. He's like a cartoon character brought to life. He's like Mac at night, you know. Like he's
Right, right. Like a bit of a moon face.
and I mean
yeah.
that in the most positive way. Like I would totally make out with him if he wasn't a sex pest. But you know, like
Right. As it is, he might make out with you against your will.
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
That's
That's
what he goes on to do.
Hey, at least his rape scene was painted as a bad
Right,
thing.
right. So he kind of gives us a warning sign early on when the doctor is showering and he's like cranking it, watching her from around the corner or whatever.
Yeah, but isn't it also kind of implied that there's a little bit like, I don't know, I took away from it, maybe there's not consent, but there's like a familiarity there.
Sure.
That these characters, like, he might be jerking off because he's done that with the doctor before, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it seemed like the doctor lady was aware of it and allowing it, you know?
Yeah, so it seems like it's more of like a consensual voyeuristic thing, but it does kind of allude to the fact that like he's, you know, sneaking in the background and doing these things. So
And we see that they what is it? Is it every 24 hours they have to go to the computer and someone has to input something, or like they explode or something along those lines, and it's like the captain's.
I think it just turns off the life support.
Yeah,
is what
the
happens.
life support ends, and so that's the duty of the captain. But we come to find out that the captain has cancer and is dying. That's one of the other things that I liked about this is when the captain dies of cancer, they like cut out his little chip and the doctor inserts it into her finger so that she can still access the computer and keep the life support going on.
Yeah.
Like a lot more of things like that would have made this way more interesting for me, like seeing just some glimpse into the sci-fi aspects of this.
Yeah, I saw an interview with Quentin Tarantino, and he has some problematic aspects, so I'm not trying to be a Quentin Tarantino fan. But he said something along the lines of one of the trends that he doesn't like seeing in movies, and this feels like this might be a part of that, is taking old stories and just putting them in a new filter or a new setting, but basically telling the exact same story before. And this, I'm sorry, like this feels so much like Lord of the Flies that like and the reason why I say this is I'm agreeing with you that I wish they would have explored more of the theoretical stuff, like talking about the black hole and what this means, and is there a possibility for any kind of I don't know. I would have liked to see them explore more of the mechanics of why we're here and what this means, and again, maybe it's a sociologist in me. I would have liked to discover what's going on at home. Like, why is this happening? Why is this acceptable to society? What kind of place is society in where this is the kind of thing where we're doing? Do people at home feel good about this? Do they feel bad about this? Do people even know that this is what's happening on a broad scale? That kind of shit. So, yeah, the chip in the finger is a canary in the coal mine to me. That like I would have liked to see more of that, and unfortunately that was not shown.
Number of times you're strolling and fucking around in the background. Do you understand my mind is not in the scene if you're doing that?
So then we get to Bo Burnham Targaryen doing the sexual assault, which, I mean, he gets fairly far with it before he's stopped, because, I don't know, I guess they're all heavy sleepers here. But then Robert Pattinson beats the shit out of him, and then the victim actually grabs some kind of utensil and straight up kills him.
And you know, you kind of hit on part of the problem that I had with this rape scene. Well, with a lot of rape scenes in general. Like, first off, you can tell this story probably without it being rape. With it being some kind of other assault, and even if you chose to go the rape route, like you didn't need to show it for as long as you did.
It focused on it disturbingly long, and like I guess I understand the filmmaker's intent to not shy away from horrible things, but it just doesn't work for me.
I don't agree with this director's choices based on the things that happened previously and the shots that are chosen and that were put into this movie. I don't feel like it's a deliberate choice to like shed light on something that's terrible and horrible. I just think they were doing shit. Like, this was what was in the script. They didn't feel the need to cut away from it or whatever else or edit any of it out. It's just what they did. Like, I don't know the director. I didn't even do research into this movie. This is how little I care about this movie.
It's an award-winning female director. That's why it's because I looked up all that before.
Weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't understand. I don't see that there was some choice. Like, unless there's some amazing interview out there with her explaining her decisions and her choices, it's just weird, and I cannot think of a reason as to why you didn't edit certain shit out of this movie. And that's not like, oh, I'm being down on this movie. The scenes were just too long. No, there are some questionable fucking criminal type things.
Agreed.
It doesn't need to be in a movie at all. Let alone
and so
this
that scene had me uncomfortable, but where it lost me is directly after that, when after she checks on Mia Goth, the victim of the assault, the doctor, I guess, gets inspired to go rape rotten Robert Pattinson in his sleep.
Yeah, and like, okay, so first off, we're shown that sometimes she just puts sedative in I'm guessing the water supply, so everybody fucking passes out so she can do whatever the fuck she wants to. And when she's doing this does not look like the first time she's done shit like this. She also whispers in his ear something like the fact that, because one thing we might not have brought up is that Robert Pattinson's character has stayed completely celibate. He's not using the masturbation chamber or anything like that. So
he's not donating his sperm either. He refuses.
Yeah. So she's feeling slighted because not only he's not having sex with her, he's not using the masturbation box, he's not donating his sperm. He is a forbidden fruit to her, and she whispers that in his ear that because she's been so patient, she deserves to have this now, which is such creepy fucking rape. That's straight up rape language that we're hearing. And again, now, framing is absolutely important, and Katie's right before that the way they framed the last one was just completely questionable at best, but almost like criminal at some points in this movie at other points. But the way they framed this rape scene with Robert Pattinson is almost like romantic. Like, the music is soft. There are moments where the music gets a little bit discordant, but most of the time it's kind of like pleasing and soft, and we watch her as she's like enjoying herself, and it's almost painted as in like, this might not be the right thing to do, but look, some people are having a good time or something. Like, just switch the genders of these characters and imagine us watching a man rape a woman to completion, and we take time watching it, and we're like closing up on his face where he's showing how much pleasure he's in while he's raping this woman. Oh my God, who would fucking put that movie on a fucking film, and who would applaud that, and who would give it awards? I'm sorry, the gender differences are real, so I'm not trying to say that a man and woman's situation are exactly the same, but still, it helps you realize how creepy something is when you switch the genders and you go, oh, that's completely unacceptable. Then it's unacceptable here too.
Right.
Like, I would have seen that as if they had pushed those boundaries and made it so that's what this movie was about, with like how creepy the doctor is, and like Mia Goth was the one raping. So like, if they had switched it around and made that's what this movie is, it would make much more sense with these scenes. Like, they are pushing this onto the male gaze to try and get some sort of reaction from them, because this is what it's like. But that is not at all what's happening here. So yet again, there's just I could see what she was doing. Like, sure, yeah, trying to make people see it from the female perspective. And does this make you feel very comfy? No, because it shouldn't. Yeah. Like, it's wrong and also, but that's yet again, I don't see that that's what this person was doing. Like, it are the people, because it's not one person. Anyone involved with this, like.
And the director is also established early on with like the visual language of the film, or the way that the film is being told, that like, take your time, settle into these scenes. Oh, by the way, we're going to have a 3-minute sex scene, which, like I said at the scene, like, I don't know if the director wants us to masturbate with them, because we just linger on that. We don't linger. We stay with her for the entire fucking orgasm to completion, pretty much, and the cleanup afterwards. So then, okay,
I wish I would have known that if that's what the director. I didn't masturbate during that, but if that was what she wanted, you know.
I mean, you know, you go back and rewatch it again. Make sure you do it right the second time. If you got to pause, you got to pause. You know, I mean, everybody's got different timings, but no. So it's like, to me, it's like you've already set up the language of the movie that there are going to be scenes that sexual things are happening and that you should kind of give in to these sexual desires to a certain degree almost. You know, like that's why we stayed in that scene. The director, I think, wanted us to feel sexy with her or sexy towards her or something like
Right, that's
that.
like a priming moment.
Yeah.
Like this is what you're getting.
But
and then the rest of
if you
it's
look
a
at the
bunch of
other
assault.
sex scenes, the other rape scenes, there's not another like sexy type scene in the rest of the fucking movie. So it's like it sets up this thing where be ready to be sexy, and then the only other times they show any kind of genital contact is fucking sexual assault, and I'm like, were you preparing me to try to like this? And then the scene with the doctor raping reaffirms that, and I'm like, oh, this is you're borderline into gross territory. This is not. I'm feeling icky watching this.
So it turns out that their mission is to test something with black holes, apparently. I forget exactly what it was. Does anyone remember?
I forget what it's called, but it's the Peterson Bridge or something like that.
Time dilation?
It basically is it's a physics theory that says that if you were to enter the orbit of a black hole, but you were outside of the event horizon, you could literally drop a thing from your ship and you would go around the circle and catch up to your own item in a way that you could harness the energy difference between the two. So every orbit you would do around the black hole, you would actually gain 0.43% extra energy or something like that. So in a sense, it's one of the few places in the world, in the universe, that we can find kind of an infinite energy source. If you get going in that orbit just right, it turns into an infinite energy source.
You don't fucking understand.
I think. I don't know. I'm not a theoretical physicist. I'm a librarian, so I don't know.
So the doctor she now has a successful fertilization thanks to her rape. And Mia Goth steals like a lifeboat basically and shoots herself into the black hole and spaghettis. That was kind of an interesting.
Okay, yeah. So keep in mind too that the reason why she went is because that was when the captain died, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was right after the captain died. So the person that was going to do it was not going to be able to do it, and then they were going to send the second best person, and then Mia or whatever her name is decides I'm just going to do it myself and kills the other person.
Yeah.
And the spaghettification scene. Oh my god, I have thoughts on this. I don't know if you all. That was I just watched it again this morning before the podcast, and oh my god, it turned my stomach. It literally made me kind of nauseous.
Yeah, it's
watching it
fucking
again.
brutal.
So all I wrote down on my paper was splat with a period. But that's not really the noise. It's more like a blurg. But I would like to point out that the sax and clarinet from the intro come back in the soundtrack here. And all we hear is the sax and clarinet playing out of tune and screeching and some random drums going on behind them. I don't know, like going back and watching it, I was not consciously aware of it the first time I watched it just because the scene itself was so riveting. But going back and rewatching it, I'm like, wow, that's really interesting use. Like there are only 3 instruments in the entire score right there: a sax, a clarinet, and some drums. Maybe I might be off on some of the instruments, but that's what I think they are. And they're just fucking out of tune. Like, the whole scene just hurts your brain and hurts your eyes and your stomach and splat.
Yep. So then he goes and the doctor shoots herself out of the airlock. She was attacked by Mia Goth as she escaped on this thing, I believe, and is injured. And I guess it's just time for everyone to die.
You don't fucking understand what it's like working with actors.
Shovel attack scene. Everyone's going nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Andre 3000 gets his wish to be buried in the garden, and then we are stranded with Robert Pattinson and this baby again. So we're back to square run. But then we time jump again, and what is she, like 15?
Yeah, I was putting her anywhere between 13 and 16, depending on, she's in that early teenage years.
Right. So, I mean, that's compelling, them being alone in space, stuck on a space station alone for all this time, and we get none of it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. All the stuff that happened off screen, I want to see that. How does he teach her about the world? How do you teach a child to be good or how to have hope when there's not a lot of hope in their life ahead of them? Like that shit is interesting to me. But
right,
which
it goes to the question of, so they find another ship like theirs that's derelict, and he goes to board it, and it's nothing but dogs that are left. The whole crew is dead, and it looks like dogs have been breeding and eating each other. And she's like, oh, could you bring back a puppy to hold? And I was thinking, well, how do you know the sensation of holding a puppy.
Yeah, well, I mean, she's seen movies. It's kind of shown that we see some movies in their little viewing area, so maybe she's seen
I
a
guess
movie
that,
of a
yeah,
dog.
I guess
but,
that has to be it.
yeah, but I mean, even then, like, yeah, I'm with you that it's a little weird for her to request that, but also, like, from her point of view, anything if he would have found a bunch of dead bodies, she would have been like, "Oh, did you bring one back so we can look at it?" You know, like she's probably just so fucking bored out of her mind that whatever they found on the other, he could have said, "I found a big bag of poop," and she'd be like, "Did you bring it? That I want to smell it." You know, like who knows? Who knows?
So I mean, long story short, so they don't give us any of that, and they're stuck. They find another black hole and launch themselves into it. Roll credits.
Yeah. I do appreciate the ambiguity of the ending. Like
Yeah,
the ending,
it's kind of.
the
It
last,
made me think. I was like,
yeah,
what exactly is going on here? So it's got, at least it's got that for it.
the last 20 minutes of the movie would have been a much more compelling movie to me. Maybe have some flashbacks to the Lord of the Flies situation that caused this. But like to what Katie was saying earlier about these long, long stares and these long pauses, like you could have cut a lot of that stuff out and expanded on the raising the girl. That would have been a really interesting. That's the story I thought we were signing up for, not space rape.
There is an interesting story here. They just didn't film it. They filmed all the stuff that I'm not interested in.
And the music was cool. A lot of the effects were cool. The spaghettification scene was riveting, and that, like, is. Oh,
it's a competently made movie. It's just the subject matter they chose to linger on is not for me.
Yeah. The way that they frame rape and some of the things that they decided to show on camera that we've talked about. I was not happy with some of the directions that the director went in with this movie. Katie, what are any more thoughts as we're getting near the end before we start to get to the review? What did you think about the ending or the time jump? Any thoughts on any of that stuff?
I mean, I didn't really care. Honestly, I checked out so many times in this movie, like, none of it mattered to me anymore. Yeah, it would have been more compelling had we seen the story that we were promised and that it kind of starts off with. It would have absolutely been a better movie. But I was literally just left questioning why any of the performers were involved with this movie. Because they're not new. They're not like, oh, we're starting our career, we just needed to jump it off somehow. They're all established. They're mostly like A-list people. I was just perplexed and confused why the cast was the cast.
It's an A-list director, so they're like, "Oh, we're gonna work with this award-winning director," and then she's just like, "Yeah, rape."
Well,
everybody.
even then, she chose the script. Like they all made decisions to be involved and stay involved with this movie, and I don't understand why. There's nothing amazing, compelling, redeeming. It could not exist, and the world would not really care about it. Like, we would be missing nothing from the film histories if this movie wasn't in existence.
So what you're saying is, instead of really focusing on the after you were turned off on this movie, you launched yourself into a black hole rather than finish it?
Yeah, pretty much. I took it as, a method research option, and I was like, I found a black hole, maybe I should try it.
Yeah, this black hole seems more interesting than what I'm being forced to watch.
I've been hearing about this spaghettification thing. I think I might want to get one of them for myself.
Yeah. So, themes of this movie. What do we got?
I think the obvious theme is facing oblivion, but I think it's funny that this movie, if I'm going to read it for subtext, I'm going to read the fact that facing oblivion is one of the themes of the movie. Does the movie deal with facing oblivion? No. I mean, they show a little bit of the Lord of the Flies situation. They show how quickly and suddenly violence can erupt and completely change everybody's lives and cascade upon itself. Sure, but did they show anything about how to deal with that? Was this all lamplighting? Was this all like, did we talk about rape? Sure. Did we talk about the negative implications of rape and the trauma that it can cause? No. Did we talk about oblivion? Sure. Did we talk about how to face oblivion? Like, if somebody with a terminal illness was watching this movie, what message would they come away with? I don't know. Launch yourself into a fucking black hole.
Yeah, I was going to say, they deal with facing oblivion by murdering everybody and launching yourself into space.
Like, you would think that these people, part of the reason is, I would hope that the climax of this story, if you're trying to tell a hopeful story, is that they find a purpose to live. Like, she was his purpose to live for a little bit, but then we just skip past that. And then what do we give her for a purpose to live? Nothing. So they both end up becoming pseudo-suicidal at the end.
Right. that if he's her purpose to live, he's just like, well, I guess this has run its course.
Yeah, like the only person I can recommend this movie to is somebody that's seen like almost every other fucking movie that ever existed. But also you have to have no sexual assault trauma, and you have to be in a very good place depression wise. Are you really happy with your life? Are you really well adjusted and healthy and all that stuff? Okay, then you can watch this movie, but don't watch it too closely, okay? Because it could make you really sad about everything.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's a chance that there's something we're not picking up on that could change perception. I mean, I'll say that, but I don't know what that is or what it could be. So,
it hints at stuff, but it doesn't actually explore them.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with the movie, is that it hints at some really cool concepts and then just completely, it's as shallow as a fucking wading pool.
So Katie, what'd you think of the movie? Your final thoughts? Did you like it? Would you recommend it? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Just no. Don't watch it. Don't bother. I want to bring no eyes to this. I want them to make no money, and I want them to learn a lesson. How dare you?
Why do you do this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't recommend it. I'm kind of on the same page as Kelly, as like if you've seen every other movie, then sure, I guess. Or if you're interested in what we've said just to see what the fuck we're talking about, sure. But it's like all the trigger warnings, and be prepared for what you're gonna see. Unlike us.
Like if you're a sci-fi nerd and you're into like that kind of stuff, I think the spaghettification scene is worth watching. It's only like 3 minutes long, but be prepared. It can turn your stomach because it's kind of gruesome. But other than that, like, yeah. So for me, I would also give this a thumbs down. It's I'm sorry I recommended it. It was a shot in the dark. It was either a movie that I knew it was a good one, or this one, which was a chance. I rolled the dice, and hey, at least we got Katie to get to tear into it a little bit. That's worth the price of admission. So
yeah. This is probably our first universally panned. I don't want to be just because we didn't like it, I don't want to be too crazy harsh on it, but at the same time, it's there's a lot of ickiness, so I feel I need to be harsh to it. But like I said,
I'm gonna be as harsh as I
Yeah.
want. This movie is a flaming ball of trash. Watching it, or even know it exists. Why it's on streaming platforms, I don't understand. There's no point. Why other people have videos about it, I don't know, and why they're pretending like it's not a flaming ball of trash, I also don't know. Need to give me a list. I'm gonna contact them. We're gonna have a sit down discussion, and I'm gonna find out who hurt them, because why?
we're gonna have a focus/therapy group.
It's time for an intervention because you're not okay.
Yes, well, thank God for Katie, because I'm trying to be the voice of reason. Maybe I just don't get it, and Katie's like, burn it with fire.
Yeah,
So,
well,
You made me watch this movie.
and
How dare you?
and
You took hours from my month for Robert Pattinson and his bullshit.
to kind of couple off of what y'all were saying, that it's what Kate was saying, like it's not a horrible. Like there are some moments that are worth it. If the concepts we talked about sound interesting to you, well, then I would say probably go watch a different movie. I could recommend a handful of Star Trek episodes that deal with these concepts much better than this. Half a Life is a Next Generation episode that deals with somebody that sees the end of their life coming, and how do they face oblivion, and is it worth it to fall in love or feel positive?
right, I bet they did it in 30 to 45 minutes too.
Yep,
right?
it was a 42-minute episode. They did it, and it was compelling TV, and it was well done, and we didn't linger on somebody looking at the stars for 45 seconds. We didn't watch somebody masturbate for 3.5 minutes to a Trent Reznor soundtrack. And no, I love Trent Reznor's soundtracks. He's fucking great, but and again, I'm sorry that I selected this movie. Hopefully, the next person that selects our movie will not pick quite a goose egg like I did. So
Hey,
who's next on the list?
Katie is next up, I believe. In the order
Okay,
that we've
Katie,
established for this.
it's your turn. So, do you have any ideas what we're going to be watching next week?
No, I don't know. My brain is unhappy with this movie right now. You brought me back into it.
So, we made it through High Life. It wasn't our favorite.
We survived watching High Life.
Yeah, we survived the High Life. It was like a skunky beer. And we'll be back next week with another wonderful movie and our entertaining rambling about it. So
Yeah, our entertaining rambling. That's very good.
my name is Kelly. I appreciate you joining us.
I'm Keith.
I'm Katie. I'm not always this angry at movies. That might be a lie.
Yeah, I was gonna say that
Okay.
that's false advertising.
It's not false advertising if we pick movies that I don't hate.
Okay, well, it's your turn next, so let's put your money where your
Fingers
mouth
crossed.
is. Yeah, let's hope we're not making fun of Katie's movie right after she said that. So.
I mean, I might make fun of it. This when it's fun.